Welcome to the Help Me Abide podcast, a program dedicated to helping you have a closer walk with God by sharing biblical truths and relatable testimonies of women who have overcome. Whether you're a seasoned believer or just starting your spiritual journey, this podcast has something for you. Each episode will supply encouragement and wise, practical advice to inspire and challenge you to abide in the one who has all the answers to life's questions. A woman who abides in the shadow of the Almighty is a woman who lives safe and secure. Sit back and enjoy a few minutes of positive conversation with your host, Jennifer Beil, and friends.
Help me abide in the one who has the power. Help me abide each day and every hour. Remind me that without you, my efforts are in vain, so that others will see you. Help me abide.
First off, I want to personally thank every single one of you who have listened to an episode of Help Me Abide. The feedback and support we have received has been so encouraging and uplifting. Our team is very grateful to have the opportunity to fill a need in the podcast world by sharing inspiring stories of remarkable, independent, fundamental Baptist women of faith who continue to persevere through life's challenges. Season 3 is right around the corner, and we are excited to announce this season's theme will be Overcomers. Our guests will be women who have been faced with insurmountable challenges, yet have not only kept their faith, but are thriving as they reach others with the gospel of Jesus Christ. To conclude this summer's bonus season, our podcast team has decided, after a few requests, to share my personal testimony. I gave this talk at our ladies' conference about 10 years ago. At the end of the episode, I'll give a brief update. To be honest, I'm really hesitant to share this with you all. I really don't feel like I am the most deserving or qualified to be considered an overcomer. So many others have gone through so much more than I have. My hope is that my story will glorify God and offer hope to those who are hurting.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Beil. I am married to Brett Beil, and we have 4 children. Jackson is 8, Judson is 6, Blake is 4, and Brooklyn is 19 months old. I grew up in a Christian home. My dad is super Christian. I'm not talking about I saw him read his Bible every now and again. I'm talking about he woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, didn't get home till 11 or 12 in the afternoon, reading his Bible, praying, studying, doing everything he could to get a close relationship with God. He fasts once a week. He's an everyday soul winner. He was super Christian. Now, he didn't get saved until after they got married, and he didn't really get on fire for the Lord until he started going to First Baptist Hammond, the pastor school's there. So he got really on fire for the Lord, and my mom, it took her a little while longer. So she is on fire for the Lord now, but during my growing up years, she was not as much. So I grew up in a Christian home. I went to Christian school for my kindergarten year, and then that Christian school shut down, so I went to public school. And at public school, I got really involved in sports. Soccer was my main sport. I played all year round. I traveled. I played in Europe. I trained there and practiced there. I was all-state soccer player my junior and senior year, and I had scholarship offers to many universities. I went to youth conference my junior year, and during youth conference, Dr. Hiles preached a sermon on honoring your parents, and during that sermon, through teary eyes, I surrendered to give my life to God and ultimately to go to Hiles-Anderson College, which was a big decision for me. Of course, my dad was ecstatic. My mom, on the other hand, thought I was crazy for giving up my dreams and aspirations for a small Bible college education. So I did up going to Hiles-Anderson College. I was a little bit disappointed, and I'll tell you why. All I knew about the college was the tour people, and they were perfect. They were perfect on the inside. They were perfect on the outside. They appeared so perfect. So I just know I was going to go there, the soccer player, with my shin guards and bruises all over and not fit in. And I just thought that they would just be reading their Bible and praying all the time when they're not in class. Well, little did I know that was not the case. Unfortunately, out of my 4 years, I had 18 roommates, and I only saw 2 of them even attempt a walk with God. And that hurt my heart. I went to public school, but I had a walk with God. My dad had instilled that in me at a young age. I read my Bible, I prayed, and I just thought that's what everybody did. So I was disappointed that this Christian college with these Christian school kids weren't doing that. But let's get real. The reason why I went to Hyles-Anderson was to marry the man of my dreams. A man like my dad who was spiritual and balanced and, loving and kind and courageous and all those wonderful things. The first 2 years were rough. I dated a lot of weird people. There seemed to be 2 kinds of people. There was the really spiritual guys who were super weird, and there was the really cool guys who could care less about God. And I just wanted to find something right there in the middle. And my junior year, I saw him. He was playing volleyball. It was the first day of school, and I just knew that was the one. I made sure he knew that if he asked me out, I would say yes. He did ask me out. I did say yes, and we got married 2 years later. Through a whirlwind of events, we ended up, neither of us were missions majors. In fact, Brett didn't even know if he wanted to be in full-time Christian service, but by the time he had graduated, we had, God made it very clear to us that we were supposed to be missionaries to Africa. Once we decided that we were going to do that and follow God, who had made it clear to us, to the time we decided, to the time we set foot in Ghana, West Africa, was 1 month's time. So that was a life changer. We had a 9-month-old baby. We went to Africa. So I want to tell you what Africa is really like, because missionaries come back and they don't want to complain. They just want to tell you all the wonderful things. Well, I'm going to tell you the real life missionary, and I'm going to tell you that being a missionary is not easy. So Africa, number 1, roaches. No kidding. The worst thing, you asked me what was the worst thing about Africa, it was roaches. I hate roaches, and in Africa you have to coexist. And I'm not talking about those baby little, nice little cute roaches. I'm talking about elephant roaches that fly in your house. I had a house cleaner that would mop and bleach my floors every day. She would mop and bleach my bathrooms, she would mop and bleach my kitchens every day, and I still had those babies in my house. It didn't matter what you do because they wanted to drink the water. So you're going to have water in your house, so you're going to have roaches. There are also snakes. There are green mamba snakes. So green mambas, if they bite you, you have 15 minutes before you die. Black mambas, you have 15 seconds before you die. Now, there was a green mamba one time in our compound, and long story short, it ended up being on the outside of our bedroom wall. The men did kill it, and 2, and the little head was, for like an hour, all shaking around. Not cool. Those things could kill you fast. One time a green mamba, Brett was working on construction for a church out in the village, and a green mamba slithered in between his legs. So it's scary. There's diseases. People would come to church. Ghanaians would come to church one week. Where's so-and-so? Oh, they died. Well, what did they die from? They just got sick and they died. Death is so common because there's just diseases and there's no diagnoses, so you just get sick and you die. Which is malaria. I've had malaria. Jackson's had malaria. Judson's had malaria. Brett had a really bad cerebral malaria. He was fine in the morning. He was 6 in the afternoon. And then by the nighttime, he was ready to die. If we wouldn't have gotten him that medicine, he would have had brain damage. He had it so bad. There's extreme heat, 80, 90, 100 degrees at all time, 90% humidity. When the power goes out, which was often, I'd say maybe 10% of the time the power was out in your home. It was okay if it was during the day, you could move and be comfortable, but at nighttime, you can't sleep at nighttime when the power is out. You're just in a bed of water, you're just sweating, and you just kind of lay there and wait for the power to come back on, which was usually in a couple of days. No power means no water, which means no flushing the toilets, which means no washing your dishes, which means not washing your hands. You don't realize how much you use water on an everyday basis until you don't have water for 3, 4, 5, 6 days at a time. Hospital, this is a fun story. One time I went to the hospital, it was 2 or 3, you don't go to the hospital unless you're ready to die because the service there, not so good. So it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I had vomited probably 30 to 40 times. I was vomiting about every 15 minutes, and I said, Brett, I can't do this. I don't have anything left. I've got to go to the hospital. So you get to the hospital, the doctor's not there because the doctor's not working through the night. He's sleeping. They just have these nurses there. I just said, give me the shot to make me stop throwing up. I just need to stop throwing up. I'll be fine. Just give me the shot. So they give this, whatever, they gave ciprofloxacin, I think it was, and you're supposed to give that over a small period of time. They pumped that thing right into my arm, which caused me to hyperventilate. I started kicking on the walls. Brett's like, what is wrong with you? I don't know. I'm drugged. Then they put this IV bag of fluids in me, and they just leave. So the IV bag of fluids is going, and then it's done. Nobody's coming. Brett, this is done. Somebody has to come take this out of my arm. Nobody's coming still. He's trying to call down the hallway. Nobody's coming. Well, the IV fluid's going out. Now my blood's filling the bag. I ripped that thing out of my arm. I said, I'm done. Get me out of here. Now, remember the malaria thing? Well, I had Blake was 3 or 4 months old at this time. I was nursing. I needed to bring him to the hospital. 90% of the people that are in the hospital are there because they have malaria. And malaria is contracted by a mosquito. A mosquito bites somebody that has malaria, and then it bites you, and then you have malaria. So all these people are getting treated for malaria, and I have a 4-month-old baby, and there's mosquitoes in my room. So we left. I didn't get seen by a doctor. Praise the Lord, I survived. I don't know how. I said, if I'm going to die, I'm not dying in this hospital. I'm going to die at home. I left. As soon as I left, I threw up. They said, you're not okay. You can't leave. I'm leaving. I'm sorry. We're leaving. The gutters, the smells. I was pregnant in Africa twice. The gutters, people defecate in the gutters. People use the restroom and throw up in the gutters. You're done with your food. They put them in the gutters, and they're all on the outside. We have them underneath the ground. These are all on the outside. So the smell is fantastic. So I was witnessing one time, and this man had a roach crawling on him. He's cleaning intestines. I'm pregnant. He's cleaning intestines because they're making a stew with it. I'm trying not to lose my lunch. I think I did a little bit of a 1, 2, 3 repeat after me salvation plan, and that's all he got because I was done. Now, we could agree what I just told you about Africa was bitter. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't nice. So why did we go there? Why did we put ourselves through torture, really awful circumstances temporally? We went there because the byproduct of this bitter temporal life produced beautiful spiritual rewards. Between Brett and I, we saw 10,000 people saved, hundreds of them through personal soul winning. Both Brett and I taught in Bible college. He had an adult Sunday school class, and in his adult Sunday school class, 4 of the people that he trained are pastors in Africa to this day. We averaged over 50 adults in our Sunday school class. Brett started a Christian school, which is still going on today, teaching Ghanaians and Liberians, some Nigerians, and some Americans that are on the team. Jackson that was where he had kindergarten. My kids love missions. They don't want to be in America. They want to be on the mission field right now because we endured the bitterness of Africa. We grew spiritually as a family there. We didn't have the outside influences of our family and a church. So we had to decide why we believed what we believed, and I think that was very important for our family. I got to have a personal one-on-one lady. I told you, the person who cleaned my house. I mentored her every day, and she grew spiritually. She still calls me on Mother's Day to this day and wishes me Happy Mother's Day and calls me Mom because she considers me her spiritual mom. Brett and I would have never had any of these spiritual and lasting experiences had we not endured the bitterness of temporal uncomfortableness. We came home from Africa after 5 years. God showed Brett that we were supposed to come home. He did a 30-day fast. We weren't messing around with what God wanted us to do, so God made it very clear and evident that we needed to come home to California for at least a while and settle here. When I was coming home, I was very sick. I had very enlarged lymph nodes all over my neck. I got strep throat 7 times in a row. I was in my bed most of the day. I slept a lot. I'd wake up at 10 o'clock. I had 3 kids at the time. I wake up at 10 o'clock, can't wait till I go to bed, take a nap in the afternoon, and then, sleep at night. All I wanted to do was sleep. My body was done. I went to the infectious disease doctor, a tropical disease doctor, an ENT, an OBGYN, a primary care doctor, had tons of blood drawn, needlepoint biopsies, MRI, ultrasound, urine samples, stool samples, all to no avail. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. They knew something was wrong with me. They all told me I was sick, but they couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. So Through God's grace and divine intervention, Brett found a holistic doctor through his work, and I started going to the holistic doctor. And on the first visit, he said, it's obvious you have parasites, and they're all over your body. They're not just in your intestines, they're in your organs, and we need to deal with this as soon as possible. So I started the parasite medicine, and they were really tough on my body, and I eventually started feeling better. It took about 9 months for me to feel better, and I was about at 75%. So I was ready to go home to New Jersey to visit my family for Christmas. So we went home. I was happy. I was starting to feel better. It was definitely improvement. I was on the up and up. So we went home, and since I was feeling better, I became a crazy coupon lady, and I started couponing, and wouldn't you know, my extra bucks from CVS expired December 25th, Christmas morning. So I woke Brett up on Christmas morning and said, I'm going to lose this $750 if we don't go to CVS. So we went on Christmas morning to CVS, and there we bought pregnancy tests, because I'm also a crazy, I think I'm pregnant every month person. So I went, I got the test, I came home, I took the first one, and it was inconclusive, so I ripped the thing open, and I saw this little strip, which I recognized, because that's what you have in Africa, not these fancy little big old printed out for you, you're pregnant. I ripped it open, and I saw a dark line, and I saw a light line. I thought, that does not look good. So I took the next test, and it said pregnant within 10 seconds. I ran upstairs, I showed Brett in shock, and I just started crying, because I did not want to be pregnant. I was just starting to feel better. I have 3 kids. I haven't been a mom to them, and I was sad. But it was Christmas morning, and you can't be sad on Christmas morning. So we turned our frowns upside down. We got excited. This was going to be our last baby anyway, so let's rejoice in it. Nothing we could do about it now. So I was pregnant. So I was feeling great. I felt 100% better. I went back to my holistic doctor. I said, I'm healed. Good job. You're awesome. I'm going to tell all my friends about you. He said, he laughed at me and he said, your body has changed from healing to creating a baby. And as soon as you are done creating a baby, your body is going to go all the way back to the beginning. You're going to be very sick once you have this baby. And I thought, ha ha ha, no, I'm not. I feel great. So I didn't believe him, and I'm an eternal optimist. God could heal me, and I prayed every day for God to heal me. And I thought I was okay. I was really feeling really good. So I was excited about that. Of course, we were hoping for a girl. We had 3 little boys, and we had the Beil curse of boys. So we were praying for a girl. And on our first several OB/GYN visits, they did tell us that we were having a girl. So, of course, we were ecstatic. This was our last baby anyway. So having a girl was an extra icing on the cake. They set us up for the 3D ultra crazy scan your body for 20-minute ultrasound to check all the organs. So we went, and she scanned my body for 20 minutes, and I really like ultrasound, so I'm enjoying it. Then it goes to 30 minutes. Then it goes to 40 minutes. Then I'm getting nervous. So they call the doctor in. The doctor comes in and says a lot of fancy words for your daughter's brain isn't really made right. I was like, wait, what? They told us that Blake's heart wasn't made right either, and Blake was born fine. So I was still hopeful. We had about 4 more ultrasounds, an MRI, diagnostic MRI, while she was in utero. They could do an MRI. It's really crazy. They all said that she had brain problems. I was sad. They told us we needed to get a genetics counselor. At this point, we were just following what everyone told us to do. So I got a genetics counselor. The genetics counselor, I was 30 weeks at the time, told me, your baby's brain is severely messed up and you need to abort it. And I thought, I didn't know that was legal. Honestly, I didn't. Not at 30 weeks. I didn't know that was legal. So I was just sad at the state of America. Brett was angry. He said he wanted to punch that girl in the face, and I don't blame him. You look on the ultrasound, and it looks perfect. There's no problems. It's a baby, and she's telling us. We didn't stay long at that visit. We were mortified. We were sad. We cried most nights. But I still had hope, because I was doing everything right. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. I was going soul winning. I deserved to have a healthy baby. I was a missionary. I wore skirts. Seriously. So I still had hope. I mean, Brett's the realist, so he knew she would probably have problems, but I was still hoping. She was born with no complications. Nothing was wrong with her. Everything seemed fine. The only thing you could tell physically was one pupil was a little bit smaller than the other pupil. That's not a big deal. Brett's grandma's one pupil is bigger than the other pupil. We're cool. We were in the NICU for 3 days, and they sent us home. They said, if she has seizures, then come back. We'll get you a neurologist, whatever. But otherwise, enjoy your baby. I was afraid to death of seizures. Someone I love very deeply and a family member had seizures, and I've seen her have one. And my face got flush. My ears got red and hot, and I, shaking, anxiety. Because you're watching somebody lose control of their body, and there's nothing you can do. So seizures are number one terrible thing on my list. That's not what I wanted. Give me something else, but don't give me seizures. So she was born. We had a diagnostic MRI within 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, I begged God. Brett said, we'll be missionaries again if you heal my daughter. I said, I read the Bible through in a matter of 2 or 3 months, trying to get his attention. I said, take my life. I've had 32 wonderful years. Take my life. Make me sick. Just let her live. Let her have a life. Let her enjoy her life. I sacrificed everything. I remember being on the floor in the diagnostic MRI where we were waiting for the final results. I sacrificed everything. There was nothing held back. There's nothing held back that I wouldn't give if he would heal my daughter. They gave us the call. The MRI results came back. She had complete absence of the corpus callosum, polymicrogyria, enlarged ventricles, water on her brain, a small cerebellum and cortex, and that's all fancy talk for her brain. Wasn't made correctly. I never got angry at God. I was very disappointed. I had done everything right. I did not deserve it. I didn't understand. I had offered everything. I'd sacrificed everything, and I'm supposed to have a blessed life if I do everything for him. Or so I thought. I would walk around and I would see the flowers. I would think, you made that flower perfect. There is nothing wrong with that flower, and you couldn't make her brain right. And I would look at the birds in the sky soaring effortlessly and think, you made them. Nobody even cares, but you couldn't make my baby girl's brain right. I wasn't mad, but I was disappointed because I knew if he wanted to, he could. He could if he wanted to. I had faith, total faith that he could, but he didn't want to, and it was a disappointment to me. She started having seizures at 5 weeks. They started off mild and short and eventually grew in length and consistency. So I decided if God wasn't going to fix her, I was going to fix her. With the right therapies and specialists, we'll beat this. She has a neurologist, an ophthalmologist, an ENT specialist, a gastroenterologist, a cardiologist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, and a stimulational therapist. I was going everywhere. I never ate. I never slept. My family was suffering. My marriage was suffering. My other kids were suffering because I'm all efforts into fixing Brooklyn. After 3 months, I was done. I couldn't do any more. My body gave out. I stopped, and I gave control back to God where it should have been in the first place. As soon as I gave control back to him, literally, 3 days later after I gave control back to him, I took Brooklyn out of the room to finally for her to sleep in her own room. I wasn't sleeping. I was touching her all night just to make sure she was okay. I put her in the other room. I said, I'm going to give her to God at 9 o'clock, and I'm going to wake up at 6 o'clock, and whatever happens in the night, happens in the night. I've got to live. 3 nights later, I came from my bedroom to feed her. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I go to feed her, and in the middle of the feeding, it felt like somebody came and grabbed my esophagus. It started choking me. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what was going on. I tried to gain my composure. I finished feeding her. I put her back in the bed. I tried to drink some water to try to clear whatever was blocking my airway. So I drank some water. I was still not right. My heart started going fast. Started feeling numbness in my arm. I said, oh my goodness, I'm having a heart attack. I woke up Brett. I said, something is wrong with me. I'm having a heart attack. He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, no, something is really wrong with me. And I started talking to him. He said I didn't make any sense. So he called 911. He opened the window to try to let me get some fresh air, and I just started shaking, and I couldn't stop shaking. Paramedics came. They checked my heart. They checked my pulse, everything. Everything was fine. They told me I was having a panic attack. I was like, what in the world is a panic attack? That's just crazy made up. It was real, really real. It was the first time I had had one. And it was scary. I didn't sleep well that night, but I thought the worst was behind me. Okay, I had a panic attack. I got through it. I'm alive. Scheduled my appointment with a holistic doctor. He gave me some adrenal support, some liver support, and some spleen support. And I'm going to tell you the following biological problems were caused by the parasites in extremely taxed adrenal glands. When your adrenal glands get taxed because of stress makes your adrenal glands shrivel up. Your body starts talking to you and telling you signals. You need to stop, relax. When your adrenal glands get extremely taxed, they start yelling at you, stop! And that's what my adrenal glands were telling me. So these are the symptoms I had. My anxiety continued, and I began to become a slave to my fears. Impending doom was around every corner. I constantly thought I was going to die. I was convinced this was not anxiety. Something was wrong with me. I was nauseous constantly. I got down to under 118 pounds, and after that I was scared to weigh myself because I didn't want to get any smaller. I felt numbness in my left arm, pressure in my chest. My heart would beat uncontrollably. My hands and feet were always freezing. I had to get up and walk in order to eat a banana or an avocado and just smush it in my mouth and try to drink to try to get nutrition to my body. I could not sleep. I could not watch TV. I couldn't be on Facebook. Nothing could distract me. I could not sit down. I walked all the time just to move. I would get splitting headaches where it felt like a knife was stabbing me through my brain. My hair was falling out by the handfuls. I would get bruises from nothing, averaging about 15 to 20 a month. I would get broken blood vessels all over my body. I was convinced at one point I had leukemia. I went to the ER 7 times, most of them to replenish my fluids because I could not eat or drink without throwing up. I could not hold Brooklyn without having a panic attack. I often felt like my body was bruised and could not touch anything without feeling pain. I could never relax. I was always high-strung and could not deal with people and stress. I would constantly be dizzy for sure. If I stood up, I was going to faint. My rib cage on the left side is still sticking out because of an enlarged spleen, because of the parasites. I have a hernia in my stomach because of throwing up too much. All of this was happening when Brooklyn desperately needed me. She got to the point where she was having 12 to 20 seizures a day, lasting from 5 to 45 minutes long. I was by myself with Blake and Brooklyn, so Brett had to quit his job in order to take care of me and ultimately take care of Brooklyn. We got nursing, so Brett could go back to work, which he did. Every morning, I would wake up and think, is this the day that Brooklyn's going to pass away? And before I got out of bed, I would pick the dress that she would wear in her casket and the bear that she would have, and I would plan what I would say at her funeral. And I would wonder how it would affect the boys. I was constantly battling within myself whether it would be better for Brooklyn to pass away because she would be healed and I wouldn't have to suffer anymore and she wouldn't have to suffer anymore. You're battling that versus this is my baby girl and I want her to live forever. I want her to be healthy. I was battling my theology of who God really was. I was battling accepting the fact that it's okay that Brooklyn's not okay. I was battling comparing Brooklyn to other children that were her age. I would have nursery, and I would have the nursery that was Brooklyn's age. And Brooklyn's still in the baby nursery because Brooklyn's still a baby, while the 18-month-old girls are running around and have their pretty dresses on. I was battling fear versus faith and realizing that I was really lacking in the faith category. I was battling death, and that is imminent for all of us. Of course, when I was down, emotionally and biologically, the devil was pouncing on me. He would tell me lies that I would believe with all my heart. He would tell me you're a failure as a wife. Maybe you recognize some of these. He speaks to all of us. You're a failure as a wife and a mother and a Christian. You are the reason you came home from the mission field. Brooklyn is sick because of you. Brett doesn't love you anymore. He wishes you would die so he could have a new wife.
The kids want a new mom that loves them and spends time with them. No one cares that you're sick. They all think you're faking it for attention. Pastor and Mrs. Goddard are disappointed with you, and they think you're a bad girl. And he told me this one a lot. You will never be happy again. And life is not worth living. Now, these all sound silly, maybe to you, but they were so real to me. I believed everything he said. One day I was crying and I was laying down in my bed. And Brett said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Brett, do you want another wife? Do you wish I would just die?" And he looked at me like I had a third eyeball. He said, "No. I pray for your healing every day. There's nobody I want." And he told me a lot of nice things about me, which made me all happy. And then he had the boys come in, and he didn't coach them, but he had them come in and say, do you want a new mommy? And they all said no, and they hugged me, and they said they loved me and that I'm the best mommy. The devil was lying to me, and I was letting him convince me that that was true, and it wasn't the case. So I decided to check out if he was telling the truth, and I decided that he was a liar. After a solid year of torture, my holistic doctor thought I was emotionally stable enough to start taking parasite medicines. And when he started on the medicines, I could almost immediately feel the difference, that I was starting to get better. The first week that I was on my parasite meds, Brooklyn went in for a swallow study. So in our necks, we have a tube that goes down to your stomach and a tube that goes to your airway. If our food goes down the airway tube, you go and you try to get it out because your body tells you, no, wrong tube. Her brain does not tell her it's the wrong tube. So they were doing a study to see if any of it was going down into her airway. She failed on every single fluid they gave her. She was aspirating, and they said, you're not allowed to bring her home unless you give her a safe way to eat, which is ultimately a gastrointestinal tube, a G tube, which goes directly into your stomach, so you bypass all of this, and that's how I feed her, through a G tube. The first surgery they did was laparoscopically, and it failed. And when it failed, the doctors didn't know it was wrong. And it was all of God that this failed. And these surgeries never fail. So they were all concerned. They'd come in and they'd check her, and then they'd come out, and then they'd put on a yellow jacket and a yellow mask, and then come in and check her again. I'm thinking, what is going on? Am I supposed to have a yellow jacket on? They don't tell you a lot of things, but I knew that they were scared. They didn't know what was going on. So that's the first time we really felt like, we might lose her. It was all in God's plan. And that's when I really fell in love with Brooklyn. I fell in love with who she was and not who I wanted her to be. I stopped wondering what it would be like if she passed away. I was rejoicing in the daughter that God gave us and truly beginning our unadulterated relationship. I was happy Brooklyn was mine, and I was willing to accept her for who she was, nothing more, nothing less, for as long as God would give her to me. My anxiety and health in Brooklyn were not a bitter that I chose. It's not like Africa where I chose, I'm going to go through this to get this. This was not something I chose. They were bitter that God, through his mercy, chose for me. Through these temporal bitter circumstances, I got born again. I have always trusted God for my salvation, but I was only trusting him for life when it came to him blessing me if I did so. Through these bitter circumstances, I made God the Lord of my life. See, I had a really, really good dad. If I needed love, I went to my dad. If I was scared, I went to my dad. I had a spiritual giant that I could always go to. I transferred all of that love and respect and admiration to Brett. So when I was scared, I'd go to Brett. When I was fearful, I'd go to Brett. If I had a problem, I'd go to Brett. If I needed love, I'd go to Brett. I was never in a position where they couldn't. I have really good men in my life. So I was never in a position where I desired God. I wanted God. I have a walk with God. But I never needed God. I always had those people around me that were great substitutes. Brett didn't understand my emotional problems, and I don't blame him. These are not logical, and Brett is very logical. But God did understand, and when I needed him, he was there. I would pray for hours a day. I've talked to God, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. I haven't talked to anybody in this room as much as I've talked to God for the last year and a half. And I could never at a moment in my time, a different time, could I have said that. God gave me a season of prayer. I would pray for hours a day. I told you before, one of my symptoms was I couldn't sit down, I couldn't stand still, so I would walk. Now, I had a nurse at the time, and Blake was inside, so I have a cul-de-sac, so I'd keep Blake inside, give him something to do, and then I would walk around my cul-de-sac. I would just keep walking and walking and walking. And the first walk of my day, I would worship him and just tell him how wonderful he was. You're awesome, you're amazing, you're the shield, you are the creator, you are my everything, you know my name. I would continue just worshiping him, telling him who he was, the star, the scepter. The second, I would start to thank him. Thank you for my house. Thank you for hot water. Thank you for water. Thank you for electricity. Thank you that there aren't roaches in my house. I would just thank him for everything. And my prayer life started changing. I started thanking God for making me sick. I started thanking God for making Brooklyn different. And I was not thanking him because that was what I was supposed to do. I genuinely thanked him for doing that for me. And I'll get to that later. The third walk would be to praying for family. And I pray for Brett and the boys. And my prayers for them started changing. I always prayed for their temporal life. I prayed that they would have good health. And I prayed that they would marry good, pretty girls. And I would pray that, everything would be perfect for them and they wouldn't have to have trials. And I started praying differently. I started praying for them to have trials. I started praying that they would need God at a young age. So they wouldn't have to wait till they're 20 or 30 or 40 years old to get slammed with this huge thing. And they probably are going to need God at a young age. They're probably going to go through the death of a sibling. And mom and dad aren't going to understand the same emotions that they have. And that's a bitter. That's a bitter to most of you, but it's a sweet to me because they're going to need God. And in the long run, the spiritual is way more better than the temporal. That's not good English, but whatever. My fourth walk, I would pray for extended family. I'd pray for all the Beils. I'd pray for all the Guarneris. My fifth walk, I'd pray for others. And the sixth walk, I'd pray for me. And I just walk and walk and walk and pray and pray and pray and pray. And this wasn't, I have to pray. This was, I get to pray. And I got to pray for people. Nathan and Tara are having a baby, and the doctors told them they couldn't have a baby. And I feel like I had a part of that because I prayed for them every day. I pray for Brother and Mrs. Esposito every day. I pray for Josh and Carly every day. I pray for Pastor and Mrs. Goddard every day. I prayed for Mrs. Sandberg every day. And I loved that I could tell them that I did that because I couldn't tell them that before. I pray for you, but I couldn't tell them I pray for you every day, and I did. I spent time talking to God on their behalf. I made six God loves me signs. They say make one God loves me sign, and that's cool. Every 2 or 3 months you're convinced of God's love. I needed to be convinced every day. Every day I needed to be convinced. So I had the hummingbirds, the number 11, that was my soccer jersey number, hawks, snails, and glider airplanes. You ever see those glider airplanes? There's the airplane and there's that thin thread, and then there's the glider. And I reminded God, I'm hanging on by a thread, but I'm hanging on. If you're leading me, I'm just hanging on. But my big favorite was the yellow oriole. I've only seen it 4 times since I've been sick. And those 4 times was when I was at my lowest. Can you believe? I was ready to be drugged. Give me the drugs. Give me the alcohol. I'm a Christian. I know better. But I wanted anything to take away the emotional pain that I was suffering through. And when I was ready to give up, God would send a yellow oriole by, and every time I would cry. When I was ready to go to the psych ward, because I told Brett, you got to put me in the psych ward, you got to put me in the rubber room. I can't do this anymore, I'm done. It hurt so bad. When I was ready to leave all of my problems behind, because you get those thoughts too. Let me just leave. Everything will be better if I just leave. Every time I was at the depths of my despair, God sent a yellow oriole by. I'm not kidding you, he did. And I would cry. And I would thank him for his abundant love for me. He spoke to me through nature. One time I was walking on one of my walks, and there was 12 hawks circling my house. I thought, what in the world? God is trying to tell me something. I had no idea. For 2 or 3 days, I had no idea what God was trying to tell me, but he was trying to tell me something. So I looked it up in the Bible, hawks in the Bible. And the first verse that came up was, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. And that's the first time God was telling me that he was going to heal me. He said, if you wait on me, not on the doctors, not on your husband, not on anybody. If you wait on me, I will heal you. He was telling me that through those hawks circling my house. I came to the point where I was not afraid of seizures or pain or death. As long as God was with me, I would be okay. I came to a point where I actually genuinely thanked God for making me sick and making Brooklyn different. I came to the point where I was compassionate towards others. I could be very critical. You go into a Walmart and there are some weird people. And you think, what is wrong with these people? Why do you turn to drugs and alcohol, and why are you wearing that? And I could be critical. But this circumstance has softened me. When I go into Walmart, instead of thinking, ugh, I think, oh, I could be you. I was one decision away from being you. Because I know if I drank that first thing of alcohol, I would be an alcoholic. Because if it would have numbed me one day, it would numb me the next day. And I would be a drug dealer. Because everybody in this church knows if something works for me, I'm going to tell everybody about it. So I would not only be taking drugs, I would be encouraging others to take drugs. But it gave me a compassion for others to introduce them to the great physician who can not only heal their body, but can also heal their soul. If I didn't have the hope of heaven, I wouldn't have made it. I became aggressively in search of lost souls. Everybody in my neighborhood thinks I'm crazy. In fact, this week I was going to check my mail, and the lady, my neighbor, was going to check the mail, and as soon as she saw me, she went back inside. Because I was witnessing to everybody. I didn't care. I didn't have any pride anymore. I just wanted everybody to get saved. Because God's been so good to me, I want to share him with everybody. I began to realize what a gift Brooklyn is to my boys. She is teaching all of us to love unconditionally. They will at some point have to defend people from being ugly to her, and that will be good for them. They'll most likely, like I said, have to deal with the death of a sibling. Brooklyn is now 18 months old. She cannot hold her head up. She cannot sit up, crawl, walk, or say words. She just began smiling a few weeks ago, and she is the most beautiful girl you will ever see in your life. I'm about 90% normal half the month, and about 75% normal the other half of the month, and I'm getting better. Most of the symptoms now I'm just dealing with are from the deterioration the parasites had on my body. Ultimately, I truly believe that God has, through his mercy, chosen this specific trial for my good and for his glory. I would never have experienced all the sweet and deep spiritual awakening if it were not for this trial. When it all comes down to it, it's perspective. Do I want a sweet temporal life, or do I want a sweet spiritual life? Now, of course, we all want to be comfortable, and I didn't pick this trial, and I wouldn't have. But he, through his mercy, specifically, I believe this, designed this trial to get me out of my comfort zone and draw me closer to him. I hope and pray you will realize that your trials are not because God hates you. It's not because God's mad at you. It's not because God's sad with you. It's not because he's trying to make your life difficult. Ultimately, your trials are to bring you closer to him. And if you're in God's will and you're doing right, they're for your good and for his glory. Thank you.
I must admit, I don't understand why God would let me face this painful circumstance. All I have to cling to are his word and his name, but that's enough, so I will trust. It's for my good and for his glory. This trial's not the end of the story. There's a bigger picture God alone can see. Faith will take me through this sorrow, for I know he holds tomorrow, and he assures me it's for my good and for his glory. all things for good. Through my tears I believe His ways are higher than any of my own. And though my heart aches, He makes no mistakes. It's for my good and for His glory. This trial's not the end of the story. There's a bigger picture God alone can see. Faith will take me through this sorrow, for I know He holds tomorrow, and He assures me it's for my good and for His glory. Though I would not have chosen the suffering that has come, I am willing now to say, Lord, not my will, but Thine be done. It's for my good and for His glory. This trial's not the end of the story. There's a bigger picture God alone can see. Faith will take me through this sorrow, for I know He holds tomorrow, and He assures me it's for my good and for His glory. For His glory.
So much has changed since that testimony was given, yet so much has stayed the same. My husband, Brett, is now an assistant pastor at our home church in California. He coaches our boys' basketball team and is the best husband and supporter I could have ever dreamed of. You know, when you're dating and you think of your husband, you don't think of words like supporter and comforter, but Brett has been that for me. Jackson, my oldest, is beginning his first year at Pacific Baptist Bible College in a couple of weeks. I'm so proud of him. My sister Lauren related to me that when your boys grow up, it's like the biggest breakup that you'll ever have. And I feel that. I so feel that. I'm excited for his future, for sure. Judson will be starting his junior year in high school. He has such a tender heart and is ridiculously handsome. I'll get to teach him personal finance in school at Faith Baptist Academy because I teach juniors at the school. Blake's going into 8th grade. Where in the world is time going? He loves all things basketball and excels in academics. He's very intelligent. He is my hardest worker, and wow, that boy can talk. Brett tells me that I'll enjoy that when he gets older and calls me. Brooklyn has defied many odds and turns 11 years old on August 21st. The median age for girls with Aicardi syndrome to live is 2 years old, meaning 50% of girls who have her condition die before they're 2. She's our little miracle girl. If you remember from my testimony, 11 is totally a God loves me sign. So I'm really looking forward to this extraordinary year I get to spend with my Brookie. She still can't walk, talk, or sit. Even she can't eat from her mouth. She has a G-tube. She's a spastic quadriplegic with severe cerebral palsy. If you think to pray for her, she's going to have a major surgery on her spine in the next 12 months to correct her scoliosis. When we prop her to sit up, her left rib cage actually kind of grinds into her left hip bone. So because she's not mobile at all, gravity has run its course and she has an extremely curved spine. She still has daily seizures averaging from about 2 to 7 a day, and they last anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes a seizure. Our Lord has been very gracious to see glimpses of his purpose every now and again. You know, he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to show us why he made Brooklyn the way she is, but it's so kind of him to allow us to see sometimes his purpose. When she was younger, the school district paid for a bus to come pick her up, and her nurse would go to school to get some interaction and learning from a special needs teacher and to be around students that were her age with conditions similar to hers. Her teacher was a Jehovah's Witness for like over a decade, and through a series of events, she ended up coming to our church. I was able to witness to her, and she got gloriously saved. Tears running down her face. I mean, real deal. We're still in contact, and she refers to Brooklyn as her personal soul winner. And that's just one short story of the many miracles and blessings we have encountered because of our princess warrior, Brooklyn. She is a very, very bright light in a dark world. I apologize to her sometimes to tell her that I'm sorry that she has to suffer so much so that she could have changed my life so deeply. God used her life. I just hate that she has to suffer in order for all of us to get the benefits. I continue to battle symptoms of the parasites I got in Africa, but I'm doing much, much better. Anxiety and depression are feelings I've learned to combat for sure, to cast that stuff down, but also coexist with. I get to teach at our Christian school. I started a ladies' walk and talk soul winning time on Tuesday morning for my friends and I to go pass out tracts and witness while we're getting our exercise in during the school year. I work in the nursery. I get to go soul winning with my husband on Saturday mornings. I administrate our church's healthcare plan and try to help my husband as much as I can with anything he needs. And I also host a pretty awesome Christian ladies podcast. Staying busy helps me keep my thoughts right and my focus on others and not myself. Brett, I, and the boys get to go back to Ghana at the end of August. We're really looking forward to seeing so many people that we love so much and just to catch up on both Ghanaians and American missionaries alike. What an amazing God that has allowed us to go back to our mission field for a short amount of time. If you could pray for me, I don't really like flying, and that's a really long flight, so that'd be great too. Thanks again for listening. I don't feel like I'm the most deserving or qualified to tell an overcoming story, but I do thank God for giving me the opportunity to share how He, my Heavenly Father, has been so, so good to me. He's worthy, and I pray this episode was for your good and for His glory. Thank you so much for listening to the Help Me Abide podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our podcast website, www.helpmeabide.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. The Help Me Abide podcast is a ministry of the Faith Baptist Church of Wildomar, California, pastored by Pastor Bruce Goddard. That being said, it's important to remember that this podcast is not a substitute for regular church attendance. We encourage all of our listeners to be faithful members of a local, independent, Bible-believing Baptist church. My heartfelt gratitude goes out to Mrs. Tammy Goddard, who facilitates the podcast, Lisa Grubb, who expertly directs our social media outreach, Connie Marujo, who tirelessly promotes our resources, and Lindsay Osgood, who provides the perfect musical accompaniment to the interviews. Without our amazing team, this podcast would not be possible. Also, big thanks to Faith Music Missions for allowing us to use their beautiful music on our podcast. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content.